Lots more still to come. Lord Frost is going to join me with his take on the Labour Brexit and reset deal with Brussels. Rupert Lowe MP will speak frankly about Reform UK and Nigel Farage. And Julie Binder will be here to talk about her new book, Lesbians, Where Are They Now? And reflect on that latest ruling from the Supreme Court. But first, joining me now is Alex Burghart MP, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Lovely to see you this morning. Now, Kemi Badenoch says that the Great Brexit reset is a surrender deal, but Labour are saying, well, sorry, the deal that Boris Johnson negotiated wasn't good enough. Alex, can you hear me?
Hi, Camilla.
Hello, can you hear me? Was the withdrawal agreement full of holes that need to be plugged?
So No, look, so what we're seeing at the moment is, I think we're on the brink of this big capitulation, and that one of the big things that was won when we left the EU was that we could make our own rules, we could make our own regulations. And actually what we're seeing is that the government appears poised to sign up to what's called dynamic alignment. And dynamic alignment means that we will have to follow the EU's rules on a whole host of regulation that affect trade and goods and fishing, goods and food. But we won't get a say on how those rules are created, and that's not what the British people voted for in 2016. What British people voted for was independence and sovereignty, and it looks like this is just going to be a rollover on that.
I know, but Boris Johnson said it was an oven-ready deal, but hasn't it caused problems at the border with long waits for lorries, food going off inside, exports down, imports down? Problems over defence and security pacts, still a problem with migration across the border. I appreciate stopping the boats wasn't a priority in 2020, but it's become a priority now.
So if you look back to 2015, Camilla, the volume of UK trade with the rest of the world was about £1 trillion, just over £1 trillion. And by 2023, that had become over £1.5 trillion. So all this nonsense that people were coming out with during the Brexit debate, all this stuff that we heard from the Remainers and the Labour Party about how it was going to kill UK trade with the world, just turned out to be total rubbish, right? So you always have to look at these debates through the prism of what has actually happened since. What's actually happened since is that UK trade with the rest of the world has grown very sharply despite all of the nonsense that people spoke at the time.
But isn't it the case that Theresa May, your former Prime Minister and Conservative Prime Minister, absolutely bungled the negotiations almost from the very beginning, came out with this checkers deal? Boris Johnson then inherits a bad deal. He's got a hospital pass that he tries to kind of metaphorically polish, and you end up with a kind of lousy withdrawal agreement that puts a divider in the Irish Sea, and the whole thing's a bit of a nightmare, simply because the Conservatives, unfortunately, didn't negotiate well from the very beginning.
Yeah, if you remember that very early on in this process, the Conservatives didn't have a majority in Parliament, being opposed by parties of all stripes. I'm very pleased that you've got Lord Frost coming on your show later, Camilla, because I think what Frost managed to do in those negotiations was pull the iron out of the fire. He brought an end to free movement. He brought an end to our regulatory alignment with the EU. He got the first stage and a good deal on Britain's fish, and he managed to put us in a position where we were truly out of the EU. What the Labour Party is now trying to do in government is move us back in, but with none of, if you're part of the EU, you get to sit at a table and decide what the rules are going to be. If you're not, you don't. But to then be on the outside and to take the EU's rules just sounds like the worst of both worlds to me. So I think that what they're going to do, what the new government's going to do tomorrow is a hiding to nothing.
I know, but some of the reason why the Brexit deal was sabotaged or nearly sabotaged was because actual Tories were railing against it. You had Tories in your own party trying to reverse the referendum. And that is ultimately why, along with your failure to control immigration, that you're now having a horrific slump in the polls. You didn't deliver on Brexit.
There were a few Conservative MPs who... We did deliver on Brexit, Camilla. You know full well that we left the EU, we took back control of our fishing waters, we took back control of our money, we took back control of our laws, not subject to the ECHR anymore. So the idea that we didn't leave the EU is wrong, and you'll be able to ask Lord Frost about that later on. But the real body of people in that Brexit Parliament who were opposing us were the Labour Party, many of whom are now forming this administration, many of whom are now in power, and these are the people who are trying to take us back into the EU, but without the power of being in the EU. It's the worst of both worlds.
OK, tell me about your deportation bill. Why now? How will it work?
So the reason that Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary, has been talking about this recently is because Labour has its own wrong-headed legislation going through, and Chris has been seeking to make amendments to that. And what we want to do is bring in a hard legal cap that on immigration Parliament would have to vote for every year. Politicians of all stripes have to stand up and say exactly what they thought the right level of immigration would be. We will set out what that number is close to the election, but it will be very, very much below what Labour's providing right now.
Closer to the election? Why can't you tell us what it is now?
Because we need to do. One of the problems that we always have with the immigration debate is that people don't do the detailed work on it. It's clear that the Labour Party didn't do the detailed work on it going into the last election. We want to make sure that whatever cap number we come up with is absolutely deliverable and much lower than the level we have now. We are in opposition. We have time to do that thinking. We're going to do it and we're going to get it right.
How can you deliver it when you've never delivered it before?
This is a new generation of people who are in charge of the Conservative Party now. We will absolutely get this right for the British people.
When are you going to tell us what this cap is? Because by the time of the next general election, that's not soon enough, is it? I mean, you're fighting elections in Wales and Scotland next year. So why can't you put a figure on it in the next, say, couple of months?
We will not have a chance of being in power until 2029. And the fact is that before the next election, everybody needs to know, the country needs to know what they're voting for. We will set that out well in advance of the general election so that people have a real choice between a Conservative Party who has an actual plan to bring down immigration to much lower levels and a Labour Party that is going to allow it to spiral off into the stratosphere.
I'm getting the sense that you're getting closer to announcing that you do want to leave the ECHR.
What makes you think that, Camilla?
Because there's a lot of rhetoric in Tory circles about moving in that direction. I think you've acknowledged that Robert Jenrick has had huge cut-through on that compared to Kemi Badenoch. And in order to deport the number of people you're wanting to deport and actually control the borders, it might be your only option. Also, you've hinted at it because you've put an amendment on Labour legislation to try and disapply parts of it to immigration policy. So that's 5 good reasons why you might do it. And the 6th reason will be because you've got Nigel Farage and Reform breathing down your neck, beating you in the polls at every turn, and you're not trusted to bring the numbers down.
So in the leadership contest, Kemi was very clear that we would probably have to leave the ECHR, but that we weren't going to leap forward to have a policy without having gone through all of the legal issues that are at stake. One of them, for example, which people don't talk about enough, is the failure of the Refugee Convention, which was drawn up after the end of the last war and is now hopelessly out of date. And that has actually been one of the reasons why the UK government has lost court cases over trying to deport people. We need to get everything out, put it on the table and get it right so that there is something that will actually work. We had enough of people just making headline announcements. This has got to be a plan that really works, and we have got the right legal minds on it. We're going to get a solution and we're going to be able to deliver it after the next election.
Even the Prime Minister is now saying that he regards Reform to be the unofficial opposition, but the real opposition. He's right, isn't he?
Absolutely not. We are the second largest party in the House of Commons. We still have far more councillors than Reform. We are the challengers to this government. We're still.
How many councillors do you have compared to Reform?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
How many do you have?
I think we've got about 5 times as many councillors across the country as Reform do. We had a very bad set of local elections earlier this month. No one's denying that, but we still have a huge number of councillors across the country. We're still the second largest party in Parliament. And as you see time go along in this Parliament, you'll see that there is only one major party that has a clear plan for the country that it can deliver on. You'll see a Labour Party that is failing to deliver for British businesses and British people, and you'll see a reform that is just chasing headlines but not coming up with clear and detailed proposals. And when it comes
yes or
to
no
it,
question to finish, Mr. Burghart. Yes or no question to finish. Will you accept Rupert Lowe into your party? Yes or no?
I greatly respect Rupert Lowe, and
I'm not hearing a yes or a no.
Very hard time by reform. That would we consider everyone's application to the Conservative Party, but
so it's not a no, is it?
Rupert has not made. It's no, it's not a no. But I don't know that Rupert will want to join. I don't. I think that we would look very closely and carefully at any application from Mr. Lowe should he wish to make one.
Interesting, Alex Burghart. What a note on which to finish. With that bombshell, thank you very much for joining me this morning.